Productivity, eh?
In a nutshell, yes. My figures show that our production costs are too high on current output. Not in all areas, perhaps, but in a significantly wide range.
Well, this new competition we're having to meet, it's high time we did something about it. The order books are full at the moment.
But there's no telling how long it'll stay that way. According to these figures, several of our products are not sufficiently competitive. And generally, the future for return on capital doesn't look too healthy. Which means that we'll have to find ways of cutting costs. Labor, machine utilization of materials, everything.
You mean we should have a complete rethink covering our whole operation? Manufacturing, sales, the lot?
Yes. We just can't go on tackling each job piecemeal. What we want is a company improvement plan. And this is probably the best time to start looking at it.
That's what's going to require a lot more thinking, Jim. Come into my office. Let's discuss it.
We'll have to involve the shop floor in our plans. I've been thinking of a comprehensive productivity agreement.
Yes, there might be something in that. Mind you, a productivity agreement's all very well in theory. But we'd have to be absolutely certain in our own minds that it would result in real material gain for the company. It would have to lead to lower unit costs.
I'll tell him, yes. Right. Mr. Kingsbury, that was the gentleman from the Employers Association confirming the appointment this afternoon.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Would you try and get hold of Norman Sefton for me? Ask if he could spare a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying, Jim, I'm opposed to this idea. In fact, when I first saw your analysis of unit costs over the last 2 years, I imagined you'd be coming up with something like this.
Well, as I see it, we have no alternative if we want to keep our markets. Here's the evidence. In terms of profit, we may be doing well enough in some things, but look at this. And this.
It isn't down here. Good Lord. You can't go on making a loss on this one. Get this straight, Jim. You're still suggesting we go for a productivity agreement, aren't you?
Yes.
You're not thinking of higher incentives for harder work, solving the problem that way.
A financial incentive scheme? Not necessarily. What I have in mind is something more fundamental. A change in methods of work. Linked, of course, with increases in pay and possibly fringe benefits.
Yes, well, we've had work study already for, it's 3 years now. Well, that should help us to introduce whatever changes are necessary in production planning and control procedures.
I estimate we could achieve 10% higher productivity in this way alone. Then there's overtime. It's running as high as 20% of standard hours in some shops.
Ah, Norman. We're just discussing Jim's analysis of unit costs. Have you had time to go through it yet?
Yes, a bit shattering in some ways, isn't it?
I think it indicates we need to make some changes. But I'm not sure I go all the way with you, Jim. I agree with you in broad outline, of course, but I think we'd be asking for trouble if we tried to rush into everything at once.
Yes, I was having a look at those new machines I was telling you about. I think they're pretty much what the makers claim them to be. At least I can't see any snags. They're semi-automatic, and they'd give us at least 20% higher output.
I wasn't thinking so much of new machines, but more of a fresh look at the way we use our resources. Labor, machines, materials, there's a lot of slack we could be taking up.
In either case, it would mean starting discussions for a productivity agreement. Unless I'm reading you both wrongly.
Yes, in due course, we'd have to bring the union in and negotiate some sort of deal. But the first thing is to work out exactly what we want in detail, so as to put it to them as a package.
You wouldn't think of bringing them in at an earlier stage?
No, I can't see the point of it. Consultation's all very well, but we've first got to be quite clear in our own minds what it is we're consulting about. I'm sure the men would prefer it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not certain that you're right there, Norman. I think you're underestimating the difficulties.
And the opportunities.
How do you mean?
You're thinking of a partial productivity agreement, more or less exclusively related to the installation of new plant in the machine shop.
That would seem the most practical way.
Then we run straight into the danger of inequity of pay and conditions within the works.
An open invitation to leapfrogging wage claims.
And apart from the fact that there is generally a considerable degree of underutilization of manpower. And it's this we should be looking at before thinking of introducing new machines.
Yes, production is a chain process, isn't it? And a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
That's what I mean. It's no use having a 100% efficient assembly shop if your machine shop's only 50% efficient.
Well, that's fair enough. But let's deal with each problem as it comes.
I think before we go any further, we ought to determine exactly what we mean by a productivity agreement. Jim?
Well, as I understand it, a productivity agreement aims at improving the use of resources to give efficient, low-cost production, but at the same time improving the level and stability of wages, and possibly fringe benefits too, to gain the cooperation of labor.
Yes, but what exactly does it involve?
Ideally, a change in attitude throughout the whole plant. Everyone contributes ideas and shares in decisions. And it's not just a one-off approach. It sets a new style for the future.
Participative management.
Yes, but we can't expect that.
I said ideally. And there's one other thing. An agreement of this sort is essentially forward-looking. Once we have this agreement, we must expect to pay increased wages for the expected gains from increased productivity.
Well, that might be your idea, Jim, but it isn't mine. I don't know what you think, S.K.
Well, it seems to me obvious that the more comprehensive the agreement, the more likely it is to work out smoothly in the long run.
Well, I won't quarrel with that. But I just don't agree that Jim's ideas are at all practicable, even if they're desirable, which I doubt.
Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Now, what I'd like to do first is to go through Jim's analysis, and then we'll have an exchange of views on what exactly we think is involved, just how much change is necessary.
Well, that's that done. Dan, you've got something on your mind.
No.
Yes, you have. You've been sitting there brooding all evening. You haven't heard a word I've been saying to you. Is something wrong at work?
No. No, just the opposite, in fact. The order books are full. So long as we can produce the stuff, meet delivery dates, keep the price steady. Jim Harding, he's been on one of these courses, you know, a great one for all the jargon.
Well, you don't do so bad yourself if it comes to that.
Well, you've got to give things the right name, I suppose. Well, Jim's suggesting some sort of productivity agreement, and Norman Sefton's gone overboard with some new machines he's discovered. It'll mean a lot of changes one way or the other. Shift work, for one, I shouldn't be surprised.
Well, I don't see the men's wives liking the idea of shift work.
Oh, I don't know.
But it's bound to upset things. People are used to having their evenings free. Well, for their friends, for one thing. I think it'll be a big upset.
Well, yes, at first, of course, it will mean people will have to change their habits and so on. But there's quite a lot of shift work around here already, you know. And when they find their mates are free at the same time, they'll probably get to like it.
Well, I know I wouldn't.
You going to have something?
No, thank you.
I was thinking for a time of letting Norman Sefton have his head over this. He's all for working out the details on paper first, and then saying to the men, this is what we want. Asking them to rubber stamp it, more or less.
Well, what's wrong with that? I thought you always did it that way.
Oh. I want to try something different. I'm going to overrule Norman and bring the men in on this right from the very start. Get them participating. My idea is to put the cards on the table and say to them, now, these are the problems. Let's get together to find the right solution.
Yes, but will they?
Well, why not? We all work for the same firm, don't we?
Sounds a bit idealistic, if you ask me.
I've been talking it over with the chap from our Employers Association. Some firms have done it quite successfully. It's partly a matter of communication, both ways. Not just from the management to the men, but the other way around also. We often forget the amount of ideas and expertise we've got under our very noses, right there on the shop floor. But it's got to work both ways.
I grant you, a man knows the job he's doing a lot better than anybody else. I don't see how he can help you with management problems. He'd have to know the facts and figures, for one thing.
We'll give them the facts and figures.
Show them the book.
Yes.
Man, you're crazy. But you can't do that. You'll have the firm's secrets spread all over the town.
We'll make available any information that's relevant. After all, that's the whole basis of participation. I have in mind a system which will involve the workforce in the firm's affairs as a regular thing. It'll pay off in terms of improved productivity, in fact, in a general improvement of the running of the whole work.
I'll have that drink after all. No, don't bother. I'll get it.
I'm going to put it to the shop stewards tomorrow. It won't be easy persuading them. It's a new idea for everybody. It's going to mean changed attitudes on all our parts.
They won't buy it, you know.
I think they will. And to put it bluntly, we're not doing well enough in many areas. Our delivery dates are frequently something of a headache. Our quality is not always all it should be, and some products are costing too much or making a loss. Now, this part of the analysis shows the unit costs over the last 2 years, and we've got to find a way, together, of reducing those costs.
What exactly are you proposing?
Well, Jack, take the machine shop, for example. Now, are we getting the best out of the plant? Would there be any advantage in thinking of new machines? Can we save on materials? Can we cut down on overtime? What I'd like to hear is the views of the men actually doing the job. Get everybody participating. That's really why I've asked for this meeting, just to see how far participation is possible.
I remember the last place I worked, I got new machines. There they were, all lined up at the far end with cloth and old rags stuck over the top of them. The men wouldn't touch them.
Why was that, Bernie?
Well, because they'd been foisted on them, you know. One bright Monday morning, they turned up and there they were.
You know, I'm with Bernie on this. All the new machinery in the world will do you no good if nobody will walk over to press the button to start the things working.
That's just what I was talking about with participation, to avoid situations like that.
So if you're thinking of new machinery...
No, that'd be jumping the gun.
I thought that's what you had in mind.
What I have in mind is exploring together some of the ways we might improve productivity. Now, this might involve new machinery.
Bound. Unavoidable.
Not necessarily. I'd like to take a lot of opinions before we come to this decision.
Well, I can think right off. Half a dozen ways of saving money. I'm sure you can too, Bernie.
Ah, that flaming store, for one. Materials are never there when they're needed. But to my way of thinking, decisions of this kind, that's the business of management. We have to be consulted, of course we do. But this sounds like you're expecting us to do your work for you, and that's not on.
You prefer us to work out what we want and then present it to you all cut and dry.
As a basis for negotiation, yes.
That is management's job, after all.
It's the way we've usually handled things in this plant, and I see no reason for changing it now.
What about you, Jack? Do you think it's a good way?
Well, it's not the way we did it when we introduced work study. We had quite a number of sessions then, hammering it out together.
That was before my time.
And it's worked, hasn't it?
Well, I'm all for meeting the management halfway, if that's what you're offering. But we'll have to put it on a proper footing, of course. But if we can get real participation going, none of us will lose by it.
No, Jack, look, participation. That may be all right in an ideal society, but we're up against the system. Management's on one side, and we're on the other, and we'd be only cutting our own throats. Would we believe any different?
Yes, all right, Bernie. But what I'm putting to you is this. The prosperity of this firm is the prosperity of all of us, labor and management alike. So why don't we get together, pool our ideas, and work out, all of us together, what changes are necessary to get the improved productivity that we need? We'll all benefit by it.
How much?
That's the matter we'll be discussing.
I know all about participation. It's a very pretty word. But what you're really asking is for the men to change their ways of working so that you can make more profit.
Oh, yes, of course we are. But the men will have a share. Now, look, the scheme I'm thinking of is that we work out the contributions made by additional capital expenditure, new machines and so on the one hand, and the changes in working methods on the other. Then we divide the direct benefits accordingly.
When?
Well, as soon as we know. Have to earn the money first.
No. Wait and see's no good. If you're going to ask the men to accept changes, you'll have to pay them right from the start.
Bernie's right there. If this is going to be real participation, you've got to have a forward-looking agreement with increased wages paid from the start, based on an estimate of what you save as a result of these changes.
That's just not reasonable. At the end of a 12-month period, perhaps, when we can look back and work out what we've saved. But to pay in advance just isn't on.
None of this will be on if you don't. We work for wages, not for pie in the sky.
And what happens in a bad year? The men won't stand for taking a cut just because the firm hasn't done so well. I can see we've got some hard bargaining ahead of us.
You know, I'm not at all sure that a share of production plan like Norman's been describing is entirely suitable to our particular situation. I'm quite sympathetic to the idea in principle, but in practice, I think we need a broader and more flexible approach.
Well, I'm not sure of the share production plan either. Incentive payments are all right, but...
Well, look, Jack, today we've simply been putting out feelers to see whether or not talks are going to be possible at all. But what I'm hoping we'll aim at is a comprehensive productivity agreement to be worked out step by step with each side contributing its own ideas. And you'd share in any cost savings you'd help to bring about. In the long run, this could affect pretty well the whole plant.
Well, I won't say we can't do with some new ideas. Speaking for myself, I'm all in favour of it. Once we've reached agreement over the conditions necessary to start these talks. But I'm only one man. I'll have to go away, talk to the lads about it. Think it over a bit.
Yes, well, perhaps we could have a word next week. Or whenever you're ready.
In the meantime, I'll have a word with the foremen and supervisors and get their reaction.
There's just a couple of things. First, disclosure of information. Now, we can't be much help by talking in the dark. You'll have to give us all the information we need.
Oh, yes, I thought of that.
It'll mean all the facts and figures.
You'll have to let us see the books.
Of course. You'll be given all the relevant information. The sort of cooperation I'm hoping we'll be able to achieve wouldn't be possible without it.
And then there's this question of redundancy.
Now, wait a minute, Jack. Let's leave that one till later. First of all, let's see if the deal's on at all.
Okay, as I said, we'll talk it over. But it's not going to be easy. There can be lots of snags, as today's session showed.
Well, I'm not expecting that it will be easy. But I think we should give it a try, all the same.
You know Bill Harrison's still without a job. Last summer it was that made him redundant, and he's still without work.
Yeah, he's been unlucky.
Productivity agreement, that was. At first they said there was nobody going to be laid off.
They should have had it written into the agreement. That's one thing we're going to insist on.
And you're having one of these agreements at your works as well, then, are you? I didn't know that.
They're talking about it, but redundancy is one thing we'll not agree to. Some of the lads will be shifted about a bit, it's bound to be. But if they want to cut down on the jobs, they've got to do it by natural wastage.
Oh, yes.
Like when someone leaves or retires, you just don't replace them.
There'll still be fewer jobs to go around.
Yeah, but nobody's going to get a sack, not if I can help it.
That's all very well for the ones that's in jobs, but what about them that aren't? I mean, Bill Harrison's not the only one, you know. There's quite a lot of them round this way out of work.
Yeah, I know.
Then there's the kids who are still at school. Your young Tommy, for instance. Couple of years' time, he'll be needing a job. What chance shall the kids have with less work around? There's just not the openings there used to be.
Well, that's one of the problems we're going to discuss with our district official tomorrow.
There have been reports in the press of productivity agreements in some parts of the country being little more than redundancy agreements. Well, so far that hasn't been the case with us, but it's still something we've got to be very watchful about. However, I'll come back to that redundancy point later. What I want to say is now, don't try to go it on your own without the union. It's not worth it. There are too many snags and pitfalls.
What bothers me is this business of seeing the firm's books. I know it's something we've got to do in our own interest, but between the three of us here, I wouldn't have the slightest idea what to look for.
There's no need to worry your head about that. We've got a lot of expertise up at union headquarters. All we do is send the figures over there and let them sort it out. Well, that's the first point I want to make. The union can offer help. Consultancy services, if you like to call them that. So use them.
But what are we going to get out of it? That's what I want to know. All we've heard so far is the management asking us to tell them where they're going wrong, with a sort of half promise of more money in the sweet by and by. Well, I'm not playing along with that one for a start. How do we know they're being serious?
Well, if you want some concrete evidence of good faith on their part, you could ask for an enabling payment. In some cases, money has been paid out before the proper bargaining starts. I think it's fair enough myself. It gives the lads some reassurance that talks won't go on for so long that they lose out on normal wage negotiations. But you'll just have to play it by ear.
It would be a way of showing that they really mean business. It's Sefton, the works manager, that worries me.
It's hard cash, and I'll be able to take back.
But the broader question now, the one that you raised, Bernie. What are you going to get out of it? The answer is a bigger wage packet and less overtime to get it.
And longer paid holidays. That's one thing I'd like.
Well, then, you say your firm's wanting to go in for much more participation from the shop floor. Well, that's on the right lines. It's about time more managements took that view. Now then, Jack, the first thing to watch, the first important thing is your own members. Discussions for a productivity agreement can go on for 9 to 12 months. So keep your members in touch with what's happening. There's no point in criticizing management for lack of communication if we don't keep our own house in order.
We'll consult our members as a matter of course.
And it's doubly important when it's a question of productivity and participation. Because it's not just more pay and benefits you're talking about.
That's the main thing.
You'll be asking the lads to change their working methods, adapt themselves to new ways of going about things.
I know, it's not going to be easy.
So keep them informed. Bring them in at every stage. They're going to have to learn new tricks. They have a right to have a say in how things are going to be changed.
It'd be daft if we didn't. As for consultation with management, that's a different matter. They're on their side, and we're on ours.
That's true, but it doesn't stop us working together, Bernie. And that's what productivity agreements are really about. Finding the best way to work together for the best reward.
The works manager's more interested in this share production plan, with us getting our share of the money after they've made it.
And we're not having that.
Hang on a minute now. Let's get this straight. There are two things involved here. First of all, there's the productivity agreement. Now, this means you working out with your management ways and means of reducing costs and increasing productivity, and agreeing on your share of the total savings made. And you'll be getting that as an immediate increase in wages.
Payment for change.
Yes, to some extent. But it's also your share of the estimated savings coming from the changes that you'll have agreed. And incidentally, remember, it's not just savings in labor time, but total savings, machine time and materials as well. And don't forget, a two-shift system, if they introduce one, will reduce their capital costs.
What about differentials?
Yes, that's important too, Jack. They may want to take this opportunity to introduce job evaluation to rationalize their wages structure. You'll have to be on that from the beginning. I'll give you a booklet on job evaluation before you go.
Thanks, Andy.
Oh, and you also brought up this share of production plan that your works managers are keen on. Well, if they really insist on this, we'll have to make sure it's part of the productivity agreement.
How do you mean, Andy?
Well, the chances are that the firm won't be able to cost accurately the savings arising from these changes until the agreement's been in operation for a bit. So they'll tend to underestimate. And then later on, when you get the figures of what's really happened, you may find the savings are bigger than they thought.
So we lose out.
No, this is where the share of production plan comes in. There are various kinds of schemes, but I don't want to go into details just now. Basically, it means that you would get your share of the extra savings that come from the changes in working methods, over and above the initial wage increase.
Oh, I get you now. Don't worry, we'll make sure we don't lose out.
We'll have to watch they don't use the plan as a lever for getting away with a lower increase than they would have otherwise paid.
I've been thinking. We ought to bring rail-ins from assembly in for the next meeting.
That's a good idea, we'll do that. Andy, about this question of redundancy.
Yes, we're going to have to think this one out very carefully. Have you seen the latest unemployment figures for this area? Well, we've had some redundancies, and it may get worse. Natural wastage is no real answer either. Still means there are fewer job opportunities. I'm all in favor of participation schemes, as you know. But we're going to have to negotiate something on job security into this agreement.
Participation? Oh, he wants them in all the discussions before we've even decided anything.
Brave man. Or don't you think so?
I just don't believe that management should abdicate its responsibilities, that's all.
Does he?
If SK believes in anything at all, it's in making life more difficult for himself. Oh, he might be right. I'll admit that. I know some other firms have made it work.
They've got their heads in the clouds, some of these fellas.
I just can't stomach this idea of an automatic price tag and change. If we introduce shift working, fair enough. There's the shift premium. But the chances are some of those changes will make life easier for the men, not more difficult. They're even pressing us for an immediate payment to start talks at all.
That's a bit much, isn't it?
My idea, you know, is to approach the whole thing from the other end. Once we've worked out what the savings are resulting from the new arrangement, and fair enough, we make a distribution on that basis. Every man gets his share, of course, but afterwards, not before.
What sort of overall bonus scheme? Share in the fortunes of the business?
Yes, the ups and downs.
What about these machines, then? Are you going to be placing an order?
I'm sorry, Steve, it's too early to say. No, if I had my way, we'd be installing them by now. With SK in his present act, Lord knows when we'll get a decision. Have another drink.
Have they started yet, Jean?
Yes, but only just.
One department alone, but in the long run covering the whole plant. Oh, come in, Jim. We've only just started.
Sorry I was held up. Had Customs and Excise on the phone again.
Now, it's going to be a long haul working out all the details, and this thing will only work if everybody contributes.
Can I speak?
Yes, no.
Well, I've been giving this a considerable amount of thought, and I still favor new machines. But I do agree there's a lot of slack we could be taking up in our use of manpower. So let's look at that one first.
It's not only manpower, it's machines, materials, the lot.
These are management matters. Now, I could draw up a list of some of the changes affecting the men which we could negotiate right away.
Now, I'm a bit worried. When I mention machines and materials, you say that's management matters. Now, that's not what I understand by the word participation.
That's quite right, Jack. I know this isn't going to be easy. It's going to need a change in attitude on everybody's part. In the past, we've had a fairly sharp division between management and labor. What we're trying to do now is not just to blunt the edges, but to try and find some way of really working together.
For our mutual benefit. That's the important thing.
Well, I think we should start with questions, not answers.
Exactly. Now, in this meeting today, we can identify some major areas in which there are problems. Come to some sort of arrangement about looking into these problems together. Identify them and find joint solutions. We need to set up some sort of productivity panel or committee, call it what you will, a consultative body on which management, supervisors, stewards, and the shop floor will all be represented.